Church. Thanks for joining me today. It's Tuesday with Ty, and today we're going to talk about some trust issues. Maybe not my trust issues, and maybe not your, maybe both of our trust issues. I don't know. The thing with God is that He wants us to trust Him. He puts us in situations a lot of times that we can't handle, and we have to depend on Him. I know one of the families in our church right now is really trusting and dependent on God. Because their baby is having to deal with a health issue, and we are praying as a church. 24 hours we've got someone praying for this baby, and we're depending on God because it's outside of our control. It's outside of His family's control. They're depending on God's provision. They're depending on God's grace in the situation. They're depending on doctors and nurses to have knowledge, which is given to them by God, to have skills and to have the technical abilities, the technology that's provided to them by God to take care of this little baby. And so when things are outside of our control, we tend to have trust issues. We tend to worry and we tend to fear. But sometimes that's where God wants us to be, so that we learn that we rely on Him. In Genesis chapter 4, you've got Cain and Abel. Abel provides a sacrifice of the first of his flocks. Cain brings some of the vegetation from the ground. And while Cain's offering seems like it's okay, God looks on favor with Abel's offering. And I just have to wonder if it's because Abel trusted in the Lord, that yes, even if I bring the first of my flocks, that what is left to me will be sufficient. That God is providing for me. He's not out to ruin me. He's out to take care of me. And so whenever God looks upon Abel's sacrifice with favor, then He looks at Cain's, and Cain is angry. It doesn't say that God was angry at Cain. It just says that He looked at Abel's sacrifice with favor. It's like my kids. I've got some kids that are very talented with their artwork at 8 years old. And you sit there and you look at it and go, an 8-year-old probably shouldn't have done something this good. And they'll bring it to me, and even though I haven't asked, God never asked them for sacrifices. They'll bring that artwork to me, and very good. And you'll see that behind me, I've got artwork clipped up there to my whiteboard. I've got other kids that artwork's not their greatest skill, but they put time and effort into something, they bring it to me. Now, as a dad, it's perfectly reasonable that I would like one picture better than I would like another, but it doesn't mean that I despise the one that isn't superior. It just means I like one better than the other. It never changes, though, the standing of my daughters and my sons as daughters and sons. I don't love one less because they're not as good at something, or they brought me a picture that's not as good as what their brother or sister brought. They're still my kids, and I love them, and Cain loses sight of this. He begins to doubt and he begins to fear. And so he gets angry, and he's warned. God says, hey, look, sin is crouching at your door, but you can't let it master you. You have to master it. It desires to have you. But Cain, going with his own pride, going with his hurt feelings, and going with his own doubt that what God says is sufficient, he goes and murders his brother. He ends up cursed by God. He ends up having to flee and go into exile, which maybe you're not going to flee and go into exile. Hopefully you're not going to murder your brother. But at the same time, we tend to choose what we are going to do a lot of times based on how we feel, regardless of what God says. I want to encourage you this week, whenever you have doubt, when you have fear, whenever you're worried about something because it's outside your control, I want to encourage you to trust what God says. That He loves you, that He's for you, but He has expectations. And even whenever we do things that are prideful, when we do things that are selfish and conceited, when we do things looking out for us or maybe not looking out for others, that when we mess up, we know our God forgives us. That we take the next right step. Had Cain taken that next right step, and Cain could have brought a sacrifice that was pleasing to God just right after this and been good. He could have chose not to murder his brother, and he'd have been good. But because he chose not to do what was right, he found himself at odds with God. I want to encourage you this week, no matter what's been happening, no matter what's going on, if you find yourself caught in sin, ask for forgiveness, then take the next right step. And then take the next right step. And when you mess up, take the next right step. Our God is a God of grace and a God of love. Don't be like Cain and know that sin is desiring you and give in to it. Instead, be a master over it instead of it a master over you. You have that power in you through Jesus Christ. Claim His promises. Live in the power of Christ. Be part of the body of believers. Be in the Word. I hope you're encouraged today. Until next time, we'll see you later.